The crystal spires of Zaelora gleamed under the twin suns, casting fractured rainbows across the palace plaza. The air shimmered with the faint hum of energy fields, invisible to the human eye, yet the subtle vibrations resonated through every stone, every step. Humans had never walked on Zaelora before. Their first arrival was met with cautious observation, alien eyes reflecting curiosity and judgment. Among these eyes, one pair stood out, deep violet, sparkling with intelligence and something more, something the human envoy had never seen in any creature before. Captain Elias Monroe adjusted the straps of his uniform and took a deep breath. The sense of Zaelora, metallic warmth and something faintly floral, filled his senses. Every human who had entered the palace reported feeling small, overwhelmed, as if the building itself expected obedience. Elias felt it too, but he had trained for moments like this. Diplomacy was about patience, observation, and understanding. Not all species measured intelligence by logic. Some, like the Zaelorians, measured it by emotional control. And the Zaelorians were masters of it. He had been chosen for this mission because of his unusual skill, the ability to remain calm when others faltered. The Council of Earth-Space Alliance had emphasized that Zaelora was not hostile, but it was unpredictable. One wrong gesture, one misinterpreted word, and the entire embassy could be expelled, or worse, erased from records entirely. Elias entered the main hall, its floors polished to a mirror-like finish, reflecting not just the architecture but his own reflection, elongated and warped by the crystalline structures. Servitors, shaped in elegant geometries rather than humanoid forms, glided silently past him, leaving a trail of soft vibrations that he could feel rather than hear. Everything about this place spoke of precision, beauty, and control. But Elias sensed something under the surface, a tension that ran deep, hidden beneath the harmony. It was then that she appeared. Princess Lysera, heir to the Zaelorian throne. She descended the central staircase, her form shimmering in the crystalline light. Elias had prepared himself for royalty, for ceremony, for the weight of history pressing down with every step she took. But nothing could prepare him for her presence. There was a warmth to her gaze, a humanity that seemed impossible on a planet that had renounced such things. Her eyes found his instantly violet meeting brown across the vast distance of culture and language, and Elias felt a twinge of recognition he could not explain. She spoke, her voice melodic but firm, structured yet somehow tender. The translator embedded in Elias' comms hummed softly, conveying her words with accuracy, but he knew it was more than what was said. Lysera's tone, her rhythm, her slight pauses, each subtle motion carried meaning beyond mere translation. She was curious, she was unsettled, and she was seeking something she had never dared name. The first meeting was formal. Ceremonial bows, precise steps, and rigid conversation. Yet as the formalities ended, the princess requested a private audience. Elias was hesitant. Protocol required that no envoy meet royalty alone, but the council's instructions were clear. Listen, observe, and act with discretion. Lysera's summons could not be ignored. Hesitation and caution walked hand in hand as he followed the princess through corridors that seemed to bend light itself, reflections echoing their forms infinitely. Finally, they entered a chamber that felt alive. Crystalline walls pulsed faintly, and the air itself seemed to hum with soft energy. Lysera turned to him, and for the first time the rigid poise of Zaelora's elite melted from her face. Her shoulders slumped slightly, and a flicker of something almost human appeared in her expression. Exhaustion, longing, and desperation intertwined in a way Elias had never encountered in any diplomat or soldier. "I cannot take it anymore," she said. Her words were quiet but carried immense weight. The translator confirmed them, yet he hardly needed it. Her expression conveyed it fully. I want to understand. I want to feel what your kind feels, every moment, every choice, every burden. I cannot carry this control alone." Not from a princess who had been trained all her life to hide, to suppress, to perfect control. The hum of the chamber grew louder, and Elias felt a strange pressure, as if the room itself were urging him to respond carefully. "You are asking for help," he said cautiously. "You are asking me to teach you what it means to be human. Guide, I cannot endure the suppression any longer. I thought I could, but I am breaking. And yet I do not wish to betray my people. I need to understand without shattering them." Her hands, pale and translucent in the crystalline light, twitched slightly, small, almost imperceptible gestures of tension. Elias noticed everything. Every detail mattered here. This was the first time in centuries that a Zaelorian had admitted emotional weakness to an outsider. The implications were staggering. If her people discovered her confession, she could be exiled, or worse. Her lineage could be questioned, her ability to rule challenged. Elias realized the weight of his decision. Report this, and she would be condemned. Protect this, and he risked his own career. But more importantly, he saw the human responsibility. This was not just about protocol, it was about helping a mind survive, to endure, to grow. "I will not report this," he said firmly. "Not unless you ask me to. You are safe with me as long as you wish it." A smile flickered across her face, soft, hesitant, human. "You are unlike any human I have studied. You understand restraint. That is rare." Elias discovered that the princess could perceive emotions almost like a sensory field, yet she could never experience them fully. Joy was overwhelming, grief unbearable, curiosity nearly painful in intensity. Every human trait he described: happiness, sorrow, hope, fear. She tried to imagine within her own mind, yet her body and mind struggled to process the depth. "You endure so much," she said finally, her voice softer now. "How do you continue knowing all the pain, all the fear, all the choices that could destroy everything?" The universe could be harsh, cruel, and unforgiving, yet humans had a strength no other species had. They could feel everything, accept it, and still act. "We continue because it is our nature," he replied. "We carry the weight not to avoid it, but to transform it into something greater, to love, to protect, to hope. We do not escape the burden, we learn from it." Perhaps too extraordinary. Yet outside the chamber, Zalora's world continued in rigid, controlled perfection. Officials debated political strategy, servants glided silently along corridors, and the twin suns traced their arcs across the sky. But for Lysera, everything had changed. Her heart, her mind, and her perception of life had been awakened. For Elias, every mission had its risks, but none had ever approached the moral and emotional magnitude of this moment. He was not just a diplomat. He was a guardian of a mind, a witness to an awakening, and possibly the only bridge between two species that could understand each other. The night stretched on, yet neither of them left. Words were unnecessary now. Silence had meaning. Understanding had depth. And as the twin suns set beyond the horizon, casting long shadows across the crystalline city, Elias understood the truth. Humanity's greatest strength was not in technology or power, but in the ability to endure, to empathize, and to stand unwavering in the face of overwhelming emotion. For Lysera, the future was uncertain. Her people demanded control, perfection, and suppression. She desired connection, feeling, and understanding. And now, for the first time in her life, she knew that one human could offer what her species had never known. Elias, too, faced uncertainty. He did not know what would come of this trust, what challenges lay ahead, or how far he could guide her without endangering them both. But he knew one thing with absolute certainty: a species capable of feeling everything, yet choosing restraint, was worth protecting. The first day of their unusual alliance ended without fanfare, without ceremony, and without acknowledgement. Yet in the silence of that chamber, something monumental had begun, a quiet revolution of understanding, empathy, and the unyielding human spirit. And as Lysera rested for the first time without pretending to be whole, Elias realized that this was only the beginning. Tomorrow, the Empire would continue to function, but the princess would be different, and he would need to be ready. For in the crystal corridors of Zalora, where every emotion was calculated, controlled, and hidden, the spark of something new had been lit. A spark that could change not just one princess, but an entire civilization. The next morning, the palace of Zalora was quiet in a way that felt alive. Its crystal walls shimmered with the soft light of the twin suns, reflecting colors that Elias had never seen before. Every hallway and chamber seemed to hum with energy, subtle but perceptible to a human who paid attention. The servants, or whatever their species was called, glided past him in their usual silent rhythm, their forms perfect and elegant. Everything in the palace demanded precision, control, and discipline, yet Elias had begun to see the cracks, the hidden moments when even perfection showed human-like imperfection. Lysera had not summoned him immediately after dawn. Instead, Elias wandered the halls carefully, observing the Empire in action. Guards moved in patterns that looked like dance but were actually precise rotations designed to optimize protection. Courtiers conversed in low tones, each sentence calculated to maintain social balance. Zalora's way of life was elegant, efficient, and unemotional, but to Elias it was also suffocating. Every creature he observed seemed like a machine, flawless in operation, but lacking the spark of unpredictability that defined humanity. When he finally entered Lysera's private chambers, she was already there, standing by a large window that looked out over the city. The light of the rising sun turned her violet eyes even brighter, and for a moment, Elias was reminded again why he had been chosen for this mission. Her people demanded composure, but Elias had been trained to see more than appearances. He saw the subtle tension in her hands, the small furrow in her brow, the way her shoulders sagged slightly as if carrying invisible weight. This was no ordinary royal. This was someone struggling with something that could break minds, and she had asked him to witness it. "I thought you might come early," Lysera said softly, not turning to look at him. Her voice had the same melodic quality he remembered, but there was a tremor of exhaustion underneath. "I do not sleep well these days. Thoughts, feelings, they are too much. I cannot contain them all. I thought I could observe without feeling. But I was wrong. Your kind can carry so much, and yet you continue. You love, you lose, you hope. I do not know how it is possible. Even pain has purpose if it teaches us something. The clarity, the patterns, they are what I present to the world. Perfect, controlled. But inside it is chaos. You are the only one I have allowed to see this. You call my mind fragile. To survive the pressures of my people, the responsibility of my position, to live without collapsing, fragile would be an insult. But you see fragility and strength together. How can one understand both? We know it can hurt us, but we continue because we understand the value of each moment. Endurance is not about ignoring emotions. It is about embracing them and choosing the best path anyway. My people laugh in controlled tones, calculated to convey the proper social meaning. You laugh because it is natural, not because it is expected. How can a species survive like that? And that is why I believe you can endure too, Lysera. You have the same potential. You have all the tools to be extraordinary, but extraordinary is not perfection. Extraordinary is the ability to carry more than others, to learn, to grow, and to face the unknown without collapsing. Perfection is static. You are alive, Lysera. Alive is never perfect. Then she shook her head, a small gesture that betrayed the mix of relief and confusion she felt. I have never been spoken to like this. My tutors, my advisors, my elders, they only reinforced control, suppression, order. I have always believed that weakness was forbidden. And yet here you are, telling me that endurance is strength, that feeling is power. And you have it in you. You are not breaking, you are awakening. To feel so much, and yet not be destroyed by it, I do not know if I can ever be like you. I do not know if my people would survive this if they knew I could feel like this. They might call me unstable, or worse, they might punish me. It was not the practiced smile of a royal figure, but the natural, human smile of someone discovering new strength within themselves. Perhaps I can learn from your kind, she said softly. Perhaps I can endure not by hiding but by understanding. Instead, he spoke of human experiences, small stories of endurance, of moral courage, of moments when humans chose to act in spite of fear. They spoke of hope, loss, triumph, and failure. They discussed empathy, compassion, and resilience. Lysera absorbed everything, asking questions, testing ideas, and confronting her own limitations. One afternoon, they walked through the palace gardens. The plants were unlike anything on Earth, growing in shapes that defied logic yet thriving effortlessly. Elias noticed Lysera touching a leaf, feeling its texture and pattern. You observe so much, he said. Your people suppress attention to detail in favor of efficiency, but you notice everything. That is a gift. Every detail, every sensation, it can overwhelm. Sometimes I wish I could turn it off. We do not ignore the flood of life. We swim through it, and we learn to breathe under pressure. Choosing which emotions to carry, which actions to take, choosing to live fully even when it is difficult. You can show them that feeling is not weakness. I am only helping you find the strength you already possess. Humans endure not for thanks, but because it is right. And you are choosing to endure as well. She laughed more freely, asked questions more boldly, and allowed herself moments of quiet reflection without fear. These were subtle changes, but for Elias they were monumental. As evening approached, the twin suns dipped toward the horizon, painting the crystalline city in gold and violet. Lysera paused on a balcony overlooking the spires. I have never felt peace like this, she said quietly. It is strange and wonderful and terrifying. Until you no longer need me. One mind had begun to awaken to the power of human resilience. One species might one day follow. And for Elias and Lysera, the journey was only beginning. The palace of Zalora never truly slept. Even in the quiet hours before the twin suns rose, the corridors hummed faintly with energy. Elias had grown accustomed to the subtle vibrations, but tonight they felt different. They pulsed more urgently, almost like a heartbeat, an echo of the tension that now stirred within the Empire. Lysera had requested his presence early again, and he knew that each day brought new challenges. The more she learned, the more others began to notice the subtle shifts in her behavior, and Zalora's society did not tolerate deviation lightly. He found her in the meditation chamber, standing perfectly still before a wall of translucent crystal. The room was designed for focus, for the suppression of distraction, but Lysera's eyes were distant, filled with thought. The moment he entered, she turned, and for a second she seemed startled, not by him, but by her own realization of what the day would bring. "The council has summoned me," she said, her voice calm but tight with tension. "They have sensed the change. They feel it in my decisions, my expression, even in the way I speak. I cannot hide it any longer." "You are ready. That is what you are learning." Each was a master of observation, trained to detect the slightest deviation from Zalorian ideals. They were perfection incarnate. Lysera stepped forward, head high, eyes steady. Elias followed at a respectful distance. The council remained silent, their attention focused entirely on the princess. The air was thick with anticipation, yet calm in a way that seemed unnatural to human senses. "You summoned me," Lysera began. "I am here to answer your concerns." She did not flinch, did not bow excessively, and did not attempt to mask her feelings. "I am aware that my behavior has changed," she said clearly. "I have begun to explore emotional depth, not as a rejection of our traditions, but as a method to strengthen my mind and guide our people more effectively. I am learning from a species that endures all feelings without collapsing. I intend to apply that understanding to my role as your leader. How can deviation, uncertainty, and emotional variability strengthen your guidance? These traits have historically led to chaos, failure, and collapse. They endure without becoming slaves to emotion. That is the strength I seek, and that is the strength I intend to bring to our empire." Finally, one of the younger members spoke, her tone curious rather than confrontational. "And this human, he guides you, teaches you our methods are insufficient. Humanity has learned endurance through experience, choice, and empathy. The princess seeks to understand how that can strengthen leadership. That is all. Because our strength lies not only in suppression but in understanding. I am not weak for learning. I am strong because I choose to grow. If our empire is to continue thriving, we must evolve. And evolution does not mean abandoning tradition. It means expanding it." Others stiffened, resisting the idea, but even they could not deny the thought that had already begun to take root. Perhaps endurance combined with emotional awareness was possible. Perhaps their empire could grow stronger without losing its essence. Elias watched the exchange, noting the subtle changes in Lysera. She stood taller, spoke more confidently, and allowed herself moments of pause that were natural, not calculated. She was learning to combine control with awareness, discipline with humanity. It was not easy, the risk was immense, but she was doing it. After a tense discussion, the eldest member spoke again. "We will allow you to continue your studies under strict observation. You may explore these methods, but know that any threat to the stability of the empire will not be tolerated." Elias felt a surge of pride, not for himself, but for the princess who had faced her society with courage and clarity. When the meeting ended, Lysera turned to him quietly. "They will watch me closely. Every gesture, every decision, they will analyze it. If I falter, they will not forgive me. You are stronger than you think. You have already faced the hardest part yourself. That is courage, not weakness." She experimented with subtle emotional expressions, testing the reactions of those around her, while maintaining enough composure to satisfy the council's observation. Elias noticed small, remarkable changes. Lysera's decisions became more nuanced. She was able to anticipate the reactions of others more accurately. She began to understand that emotions were not chaos to be feared, but tools to be understood and used wisely. One afternoon, they walked through the gardens again. Elias had noticed how much she had begun to appreciate subtle beauty, the way light bent through the crystalline flowers, the soft hum of energy in the air, the delicate patterns of leaves and vines. She paused, picking up a small crystal bloom and examining its facets. "Humans see beauty in imperfection," Elias said. "Even small things, even fleeting moments. We notice what is overlooked and we find meaning in it. You are learning that now. That is important. To allow myself to feel it without fear, and yet it is exhausting. Ilias shared stories of humans who had faced impossible odds, yet continued to act with courage and compassion. Lysera absorbed each story, questioning, reflecting, and gradually applying these lessons to her own perspective. As the week progressed, subtle tensions began to appear. Some members of the council watched more closely, their scrutiny almost tangible. Whispers circulated among courtiers, noting changes in Lysera's demeanor. Some were supportive, curious about the potential benefits of emotional integration. Others were wary, concerned that deviation could lead to instability. One evening, as Ilias prepared to leave, Lysera stopped him. "The council is watching more than ever," she said. "I feel their eyes even when they are not present. I worry that any mistake, any moment of vulnerability will be used against me. I must try, for myself and for my people. If I succeed, they may learn a new kind of strength. If I fail, they will remember the lesson of caution, not courage. Humans endure not because it is easy, but because it is necessary. And now, so do you." And as she closed her eyes, the twin suns setting beyond the crystal horizon, she realized that her journey was far from over. But she was no longer afraid to take the next step. The quiet revolution within Zaelora continued, invisible to most, yet unstoppable in its subtlety. One princess, guided by the understanding of a human, was learning to lead not through fear, but through strength, empathy, and the courage to feel. And in that journey, both species were discovering a truth that transcended culture, biology, and expectation. Endurance is not weakness, and humanity's greatest gift is the ability to carry the weight of life and continue forward. The city of Zaelora shimmered under the light of its twin suns, reflecting off the crystal spires and casting intricate patterns across the streets below. From the heights of the palace balcony, Lysera could see the pulse of her world, organized, precise, perfect. And yet she had begun to notice something new. Subtle changes, small shifts in behavior, whispers of curiosity among the people. It was faint, but it was there. Her understanding of human endurance, taught by Ilias, had begun to ripple outward, touching those who had never dared to question perfection. That morning, she convened a small meeting with trusted advisors, those few who had observed her private lessons and had not reported them to the council. She wanted to test the waters before attempting anything larger, before challenging centuries of tradition openly. "Change is coming," she began quietly, looking around at the faces before her. "Not change that destroys, but change that strengthens. I have learned that endurance does not come from suppression alone. It comes from understanding, from knowing one's own mind, and from embracing the full range of life, joy, sorrow, hope, and fear alike. Why depart from what has worked? That is the example I wish to follow. We do not abandon control, we enhance it with insight. We learn to feel without losing stability. You will be my guides, my witnesses. Together, we will show that endurance is not weakness, and that understanding emotions can strengthen our empire, not threaten it." It was the beginning of subtle change, like the first ripple of a wave spreading across a calm lake. Ilias arrived shortly after, as planned. Lysera greeted him with the same quiet determination she had begun to show every day. "I wanted him here," she whispered to her advisors. "He sees the human approach, the way we can endure without collapse. His perspective is invaluable." He had learned that restraint itself was a kind of strength, a lesson that Lysera was now beginning to apply herself. "Your people are ready," Ilias said quietly after the advisors had left the room. "They may not understand fully yet, but curiosity has been planted. That is the hardest part: surprise, hesitation, and doubt. Once they begin to question, learning begins naturally. That tradition will push back harder than I anticipate. That is what you are learning, and it will help your people more than they realize." Each smile, each pause, each question was calculated not to break the appearance of perfection, yet to signal curiosity and growth. Ilias often walked beside her, offering insight, sharing examples from human society, and reminding her that endurance was not about perfection, but about courage. "Do not fear emotion," he said one evening as the sun set. "Fear is natural. But you do not need to surrender to it. You choose how it guides you. That is the difference between weakness and strength. To endure without breaking, that is what humans do, and that is what I must do." Others, however, began to see the promise in her methods. The seed of change had been planted. and it was spreading quietly, invisibly, through observation and example. One day, an emergency simulation was held, a routine test of Zalora's defenses and crisis protocols. Lysera observed from the control chamber, her violet eyes tracking the data streams and decisions of her advisors. In the past, she would have followed strictly the instructions of the council, adhering to every procedure with rigid precision. But today was different. Today, she applied human lessons. She allowed herself to anticipate potential risks beyond protocol, to consider the emotional impact on her people, to weigh intuition alongside logic. The simulation succeeded beyond expectation. Advisors adapted quickly, citizens responded with efficiency and care, and the outcome demonstrated a new kind of strength. The council observed in silence, some faces betraying surprise at the results. Lysera had integrated emotion with control, showing that understanding could enhance tradition rather than threaten it. That evening, Elias and Lysera walked through the palace gardens. The alien flowers glowed softly under the setting suns, casting intricate reflections on the crystalline paths. "You see," Elias said gently, "change is not about overthrowing tradition, it is about evolving it. You have shown your people a new way to endure, to act, to lead. Some may see this as dangerous or unnecessary. I do not know how much they will accept." Small changes appeared across the city, citizens demonstrating more initiative, advisors thinking creatively, courtiers asking questions rather than repeating protocol blindly. The council remained cautious, but the results were undeniable. The empire could function with both discipline and understanding. One morning, a young council member approached Lysera in private. "Princess," she said hesitantly, "I have observed the changes you have implemented. I see the strength in your approach, and I wish to learn from it. Will you guide me?" Strength grows when it is guided, supported, and understood. Citizens began to emulate the lessons she demonstrated, choosing understanding over fear, observation over assumption, courage over blind obedience. Elias watched quietly, pride swelling in his chest. He had witnessed many civilizations, many leaders, but Lysera's growth was remarkable. She was not just learning human endurance, she was applying it, shaping her people without breaking the structure that had sustained them for millennia. Yet with growth came tension. Some council members, unwilling to embrace change, began to conspire quietly, sowing doubts among advisors and citizens. They whispered that the princess was being influenced too heavily by an outsider, that emotional exploration could weaken the empire. Lysera felt the weight of their scrutiny, the subtle pressure that threatened to undo months of careful progress. "I will not fail," she whispered to Elias one evening. "Even if they resist, even if some wish to see me falter, I must continue. For the sake of my people, for the strength I have learned to embrace, I must endure. And that makes you stronger than anyone realizes." She understood now that strength was not in suppression alone, but in endurance, understanding, and the courage to embrace the full spectrum of life. And as Elias stood beside her, watching the city, they both knew the path ahead would not be easy. Resistance would come, challenges would rise, and the future remained uncertain. Yet one truth remained unshakable: Lysera had learned to endure. And through endurance, she had found the greatest power of all, the ability to change, guide, and inspire an entire civilization. The city of Zalora was alive with a quiet energy, a subtle pulse that seemed different from the usual perfect rhythm. The crystal towers reflected the twin suns in prismatic patterns, as if the very city itself recognized change in the air. Citizens moved with precision, but now there was an added sense of awareness, of thought, of initiative. Small smiles lingered where there had been none before. Curiosity flickered in eyes that had always followed rules without question. Something was shifting, quietly, invisibly, yet undeniably. In the palace, Lysera stood in her private chamber, observing the city through the crystalline walls. Her violet eyes, once rigid with control and caution, now glimmered with a new understanding. She had learned the human lesson well. Endurance was not about perfection, nor suppression, nor blind obedience. Endurance was about seeing the weight of life, feeling it fully, and choosing to act wisely despite it. That lesson, she realized, was more powerful than any law, any decree, any tradition. Elias entered quietly, as he had done countless times over the past weeks. He carried a calm confidence, the kind that came from knowing one had fulfilled a purpose and seeing it grow beyond expectation. Lysera turned to him and smiled, not a controlled smile, but one of genuine warmth and quiet triumph. "They are beginning to see," she said softly. Even those who resisted, even those who whispered doubts, they are noticing that strength can be both disciplined and understanding. That endurance does not require suppression but clarity and courage. That is the human way, and now your people are beginning to learn it too. Today she carried herself with confidence and yet with a human warmth that invited connection. Every step she took was deliberate, every gesture measured yet natural, a perfect demonstration of the lessons she had learned from Elias. When she reached the center of the plaza, she raised her hands slightly, not in command, but in greeting. The citizens fell silent, waiting. And then she spoke, her voice carrying clearly across the open space. "My people," she said, "for centuries we have survived through order, precision, and control. Those methods have kept our empire stable, strong, and enduring, but strength is not only in perfection. It is in understanding. It is in endurance. It is in the courage to face life fully, to recognize our feelings, and to act wisely despite them. We have learned that awareness, empathy, and careful choice can enhance our strength rather than diminish it. We can endure more than we thought possible, because endurance is not absence of challenge, but the courage to carry it wisely. This is the path I offer, not to abandon tradition, but to expand it." He saw understanding flicker in their eyes, the first sparks of recognition that there was more to strength than adherence to rules. Some still hesitated, cautious and skeptical, but the seed of change had been planted, and it was spreading rapidly. The council, watching from their chambers, exchanged tense glances. They had been cautious, worried, hesitant, but now they saw the truth. The princess was not weak, she was stronger than ever. She was not reckless, she was precise, thoughtful, and wise. And her influence was already transforming the empire, quietly but powerfully. One elder finally spoke aloud, a rare acknowledgement. "Princess Lysera, your actions have demonstrated a strength we have not anticipated. Perhaps we have underestimated the power of understanding, the value of endurance coupled with insight. Perhaps we have much to learn. We are capable of more than we imagine." The empire was not abandoning its traditions. It was expanding them, guided by clarity and understanding, and strengthened by endurance. Elias noticed changes not only in Lysera, but in the people around her. Observing a culture that had thrived on control for centuries adapt and grow was a rare opportunity. Humans had influenced countless civilizations through diplomacy, example, and understanding, but few had achieved the subtle transformation he now witnessed. One evening, Lysera invited Elias to the highest tower of the palace. From there, they could see the entire city spread beneath them, a landscape of crystal spires and streets, alive with energy. "Look at them," she said quietly. "They are beginning to act without fear, to think without constraint, to endure with purpose. It is remarkable. I could not have done it without you. You taught me not to fear feeling, not to fear choice, not to fear challenge. You reminded me that endurance is a gift, and that wisdom comes from understanding. You have applied that gift beautifully." The citizens responded naturally, inspired by her example, and gradually the culture of Zalora shifted. Resistance still existed. A few council members whispered doubts, questioning the princess's methods and the influence of the human guide. But the results were undeniable. The empire functioned smoothly, yet more flexibly. Citizens acted responsibly, with initiative and insight. Strength had become not only discipline, but understanding. Endurance had become not only survival, but wisdom. One morning, a festival was held to honor the twin sons, a tradition unchanged for centuries. Lysera stood on a platform above the plaza, watching the people celebrate with careful joy, laughter, and curiosity. She felt a deep satisfaction not from power, but from witnessing the growth of her people. They were learning to endure, to understand, and to act wisely, lessons drawn from humanity, yet fully their own. Elias joined her silently, observing the crowd. "You have done more than teach," he said. "You have transformed, and in doing so you have transformed them. It is not the lessons alone, but the courage to apply them. They see that endurance is not weakness. They see that understanding is strength, and they are choosing to carry it." Citizens engaged with one another, not merely following protocol, but participating with awareness, curiosity, and initiative. Laughter was more frequent, gestures more natural, questions more thoughtful. Subtle changes, yes, but profound in effect. Elias observed a young Zalorian child, attempting to climb a crystalline spire under the watchful eye of a parent. The child's laughter rang out, echoing across the plaza. It was fearless and joyful, yet careful. It was the embodiment of what Lysera had learned and now shared, the balance of courage and understanding, the harmony of endurance and wisdom. Lysera watched quietly, a sense of peace settling over her. "This is what I wished for," she said softly. "Not control, not perfection, but life, endurance, understanding, growth. The Empire is stronger for it because they are learning to carry their own weight. And that is humanity's gift, reflected through you." Zaelora was no longer only a city of control and perfection. It was a city of awareness, courage, and endurance. Lysera turned to Elias, her violet eyes shining with both gratitude and determination. "I will continue to guide my people," she said, "and I will do so with what you have taught me. Endurance, understanding, and courage, that is the path forward. And humanity will always be a witness, a reminder, and a guide. You carry our lesson, but it is your courage and wisdom that will shape the future." It was the ability to endure, to understand, and to act wisely despite challenge. Through one human's guidance, one princess's courage, and countless choices made wisely, the Empire of Zaelora had learned a new kind of strength. The Empire had awakened. Its people had begun to carry the weight of life with wisdom, courage, and hope. And as the twin suns dipped below the horizon, casting long, beautiful shadows across the crystal towers, it was clear that this was only the beginning. A new era had dawned, an era shaped by endurance, guided by understanding, and illuminated by the quiet power of humanity itself.